So there are 4 important things that needs to be there in order to make it a valid ICSR. There should be an identifiable patient, suspected medicinal product, identifiable reporter, and suspected adverse reaction. So only if these 4 criteria are there, you can call it as a valid ICSR. So what happens, how these ICSRs are processed? A case is received now this is industry focused. Now, how the industry processes ICSRs. A case is received, it can come from regulatory or literature or spontaneous various sources, and it is validated, the case is registered, and then it is triaged. Like triage is prioritization. So those who are exposed to hospitals, if you look at the casualty, they have a word called triaging. Like wherever, when you are treating patients in an emergency ward, somebody with diarrhea is given preference until you have a patient coming from an RTA. So then the priority shifts to that patient. What priority to give to whom? That is called triaging. So that same triaging concept is here also. So the assessment, classification, prioritization is done. Like if it is a 15-day report, it has to be prioritized first rather than a non-serious case, which need not be reported at all. It's only for purpose of keeping in the database or something. So that has to be given less priority. Then data entry is done, coding using Medra or any of the dictionaries. Medra or WhoDD, there are dictionaries available. And the narrative is written in a particular format. And then the case is sent for medical review. And at the level of medical review, causality assessment is done by a medical person. So this is the role of a physician in this whole cycle. And after the causality assessment is done, a QC is involved, quality control, where the accuracy, consistency, and completeness of the report is verified before reporting. And the case is finally closed and sent for follow-up also. If required, it is submitted. Not all cases need to be submitted. So the submission will be electronic or paper-based depending on which country. This is, again, this slide is general for ICSR processing in any country. It is not particular to India or US or anywhere. That's why I have not included any of the timelines. So these timelines will be applicable as per the regulatory rules in that countries, and format also, whether it's electronic or paper-based, depends on several countries. And finally, the reports are archived. And the archived reports are used for signal detection or aggregate reports later. So this is the whole cycle of ICSRs. So now let's come to signal detection. So what do you call as a signal? Can anybody answer? Not from a pharmacovigilance thing. What is a signal in layman terms? Indication. Okay. Very good point, sir. No go or no go. It's an alarm that is being raised. It's a finger that is being raised and said, okay, there's something wrong. I need attention. So that is called signal. So the word signal detection, how we use that in the pharmacovigilance field is, there is something that is obviously showing in the data that needs attention. It might be a real signal, or it can be a potential signal today which can be later confirmed as noise. So that is called signal versus noise ratio. So how that is done? The primary function of pharmacovigilance is to detect early warnings, that is called potential signals, with regard to adverse drug reactions which were previously unknown or unquantified. So that is what we call as a signal. A signal is a previously unknown adverse event happening, or something that was not quantified in the past, or something that is occurring with a higher magnitude or higher intensity than what was seen in the past. So that is a clear signal. Like for example, you have a case where you have a hospital in which you have 10 Stevens-Johnson syndrome happening in a year. That is, normally it happens in a year. Given the number, they treat thousands of patients. So normally 10 patients have that. But suddenly if you see that number increasing to 50 or 60, that itself is a signal. So is there something wrong somewhere? So that signal aspect is I'm just giving one example. It can be based on number, it can be based on seriousness, it can be based on a patient dying due to a seemingly benign condition. So all these should be considered as signals. A change in the frequency or severity of a known safety issue, or change in the characteristic of a known drug reaction, or identification of a new at-risk group. For example, a drug suddenly behaves oddly in patients with phenylketonuria. That is to be considered as a new identification of a new at-risk group. So how this signal will be evaluated? we have to do a risk analysis, and based on that, finally we will have to address this by saying not for phenylketonuria or something. If you look at Diet Coke bottles, it will be mentioned not for phenylketonuria. So similarly, we need to have certain labels or certain conditions with which such signals can be managed. So these signals will be there throughout the process of pharmacovigilance, and wherever you find it, that signal has to be documented in the proper way. And traditionally, signals are detected through the assessment of ICSRs in an individual or in a cumulative manner. So that is about signals. And coming to aggregate reports. So I told you, if you look at one patient's report, it may not be actually very significant. A patient developing myocardial infarction after taking an anti-cancer drug. If you look at that, this data looks very serious, and you probably think that this drug is capable of causing myocardial infarction, but you are looking at one patient. We don't know if it is because of the drug, or even if it is because of the drug, for how many patients it has happened, and what if this drug did not contribute to this myocardial infarction at all. It could have been because of some other reasons. So the data has to be analyzed with information over a period of time, not with one patient. Because when you look at 1,000 cases, you will get a different understanding of the whole product. So, okay, this oncology product has a cardiovascular risk or does not have a cardiovascular risk. You can understand if you look at the total number of reports received in a year or in a 2 or 3 years period. So that is the aggregate report. This is called in different names in different scenarios. We call it as periodic benefit risk evaluation report, PBRER, or periodic safety update report. In the US, it is called periodic adverse drug experience report. And during the clinical trials, when such a report is written, it's called developmental safety update report. So this plays a key role in the safety assessment of drugs, provides a broader view of the safety profile of a drug, compilation of safety data for a drug over a prolonged period of time, and it's submitted to regulatory agencies because it's a regulatory requirement. So these are aggregate reports in short. And finally, coming to risk management plan, I told in the first slide itself, we are here to, as pharmacovigilance professionals, our role is not to say a drug is good or not good. We are going to say what are the benefits of a drug versus what are the risks of the drug, whether the drug is worth being retained compared to the risks, or how the risks can be managed. So assessing a product's risk-benefit balance is the purpose of a risk management plan. We implement tools to minimize risk while preserving the benefits, and evaluating tools' effectiveness and reassessing the benefit-risk balance. This is the focus of the risk management plan. So basically, the data is collected, and you collect the new safety data, identify and analyze the data for safety concerns, evaluate the impact on benefit-risk balance of the product, and then you implement risk minimization and benefit maximization techniques. So this will help us to ensure that the benefits of the drug are maximally exploited, whereas the risk of the drug are minimized and avoided to the best extent possible. So I'll just give one example. I hope I'll just take one more minute. So this, just for your understanding, this drug called Rimonabant, 20 milligram, was there in the market. And this drug was approved for obesity and overweight patients. There was a benefit. Patients achieved 10% weight loss, which is wonderful. So proportion of patients who achieved at least 10% weight loss in 1 year was 10%. And then we had change in HDL cholesterol, absolute change was there. And this was a tangible benefit of the drug. And if you just see the upper part of the slide without seeing the lower part, nobody on earth will think this, everyone will think this drug is a blockbuster and it's going to rule the world. But what happened is the risk was cardiovascular deaths were there, psychiatric disorders, gastrointestinal disorders. So if you look at the risk is much, much higher. You could probably live with the obesity and overweight rather than go for these risks. So the net effect of this benefit risk analysis was that in January 2009, it was withdrawn from the market. Sometimes risk itself will become a benefit. There was a drug called minoxidil, it's still there. So this drug was actually meant for this. And finally, it ended up in being a treatment for this. because patients developed adverse effects, beneficial adverse effects of hair growth, which they were not having in the past. So finally, the drug which was actually tested for other conditions became a drug that is given for hair growth. So this way, the risk pertaining to a product can be converted into a benefit in a very different angle. So finally, to summarize, the adverse event case reports are aggregated as aggregate reports, then signals are detected throughout the process, and wherever there is a risk, the risk management is done. So serious and unexpected AEs are subject to expedited reporting depending on the, it's not necessarily serious and unexpected, depending on the regulatory rules in every country, it gets reported differently. And aggregate reporting to review the cumulative safety information from a wide range of sources on a periodic basis and submit to regulators worldwide. So that is the scope of aggregate reporting. And signal detection, process of determining AEs associated with particular drugs and comparing the same to that for other drugs, that is the signal detection. And risk management to monitor any reported AE of the product on a patient and to seek methods to minimize or remove such AE from the patient. So this is the whole crux of what happens in the industry. So I've told you what happens and how that happens to a certain extent, and why that happens also, like you know, that we also discussed. But in which country what happens, I think it's beyond the scope of this presentation. So probably that we can catch up some other time. And some of the regulations were covered in the previous presentation. And there is a lot about pharmacovigilance, which will be covered by the subsequent speaker also. So with that, I will, and finally, there is a regulatory action connected to all the works that we do. Only if there is a regulatory intervention, it results in a tangible benefit to the population. And the future of pharmacovigilance is so far, like we are trying to get adverse events, we are trying to build the risk profile of a drug. And once it is done, the triangle will invert. We know the risk of the drug, and then we accordingly implement the measures, which will eventually bring down the number of adverse events. That's the whole crux of pharmacovigilance. So the take-home message is, pharmacovigilance can improve patient care and safety, can improve public health and safety. Pharmacovigilance contributes assessment of benefit, contributes to the assessment of benefit, harm, effectiveness, and risk of medicines. And dying from a disease is sometimes unavoidable, but dying from a medicine is unacceptable. So that is what we are trying to achieve by pharmacovigilance. It cannot be an absolute achievement. It is an elusive target. We have to go behind that. That is why pharmacovigilance has to be done throughout the life cycle of a product. And it has to be done in every country, because in every country patients are different. The genetic makeup and the behavioral things and the several socioeconomic factors all are different in different countries. So therefore, pharmacovigilance is there as a requirement for every country. So thank you so much for your kind and your interest and your listening. So if the organizers allow, I can answer one or two questions.
Sir, we can have the question session later.
Okay.
One question can be allowed. Whoever is fast. Nobody?
Sir, for signal detection, which are the databases you are using here in India setting?
Okay. There are several databases used in the industry, and one of the most used tool is called Empirica Signal. And there are several other databases called PV Analyzer and all.
Okay. Yeah. So in the database, is that the areas are reported which occurred in Indian patients?
Okay. No, I was telling you about the databases that are used in the industry. So if you look at the data of Indian patients, then we have to look at the data collected by PVPI. That is beyond the scope of this presentation. That's why I didn't go into that at all. So that probably will take a separate presentation by itself. PVPI does collect adverse events, and they do their own signals, and those are reported in the monthly PVPI newsletters. You can go to their website and you can see the data.
But in the PVPI website, if we see, almost, we have heard that it is 300,000 reports are there. But there is no withdrawal or signal detection, or nothing is done, no, as far as
no.
2008 till now, nothing is done.
No drug
was withdrawn.
No, no, there is a signal review panel, and they give recommendations. Several label changes have happened. Even in certain drugs that have been withdrawn, PVBA's opinion also has been taken.
But even the banned drugs which are banned in other countries, still it is available. There are multiple signals reported to PVPI, but there is no step taken against that.
I cannot comment on that because that has to be answered by a regulatory person. But one thing I can tell you, something that is banned in one country need not to be necessarily banned in another country. That is a call that the regulator has to take.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Further questions can be discussed during panel discussion. I request Dr. Narendra sir to present the memento to Dr. Venkatraman. I request delegates to be please. Hello. Hello. Knowledge process outsourcing, competitive analysis, clinical development outsourcing for biopharmaceutical and medical devices, IT business synergy in clinical research and development are critical in pharmaceutical industry over past few decades. Thus, to elaborate on the topic, evolution of pharmaceutical outsourcing in clinical safety and regulatory opportunities and challenges, we have Mr. Suresh Sharma, General Manager, Life Science and Healthcare, Tata Consultancy Services, India. He has more than 20 years of experience in clinical development industry. He also worked as research assistant in the Department of Biochemistry, Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. We welcome you, sir.
A very good morning to all the delegates. Thanks to Krupanidhi College of Pharmacy for giving an opportunity to share some of my experiences in the field of clinical research. I was like you a few years ago, right? A student looking for, what to do after my education, right? What are the opportunities available? Should I study? Should I work? What opportunities are there? What companies are there? This is way back in 1996, 98 I'm talking about. Right? I think time has, changed a lot, and there's a lot of opportunities, especially for graduates, postgraduates in life sciences, pharmacy students, right? I think I'll prefer probably the speaker. You can take this off. Audible? Okay. So I think the market is very, I would say, fertile for all the students out here, who have registered and want to take value out of this conference, both academically as well as from what to do next, right? So I have few questions to the students here. So I know you're used to, answering questions to your lecturers, but just not more than 3 questions for all of you here. How many of you are clear what you want to do, after your B.Pharm, M.Pharm, PharmD? How many of you are very clear what you want to do? You're very clear. You absolutely know, after this, I'm doing A, B, C, D. How many of you are clear? That's okay. There's nothing right or wrong here, so don't feel shy, don't feel afraid. If you're not clear, that's absolutely fine. If you are clear, that's also absolutely fine. How many of you want to pursue a career in your field or in clinical research industry? How many of you want to pursue a career in the field of clinical research or in your field? It could be even outside clinical research. Quite a good number. How many of you are aware of what opportunities exist in India today in clinical research or in life sciences? How many of you are aware what opportunities exist today in India in life sciences and clinical research? How many of you are aware? Not many. Okay. No, that helps me to accordingly, give the right content so that if most of you are aware what opportunities, then I can tone the presentation accordingly. But I see that a lot of you want to pursue a career in life sciences and clinical research, which is very good. It's a very good decision, right? So let's go into that. And, I think the agenda, I kept it here. Yeah. So I think the first two speakers, Dr. Tirumalai and Dr. Vijay, covered very well the process of clinical trial, regulatory, as well as safety, right? That gives a very good context to what clinical trials are about, what is regulatory, what are the processes, what is safety and pharmacovigilance, right? So that's a very fantastic context setting, to this morning so that all of you are aware what happens, in the pharmaceutical industry and with the regulators. Now, how to put that into practice is what my presentation will cover. Basically, it would be from an industry point of view, right? So I'll try to put it as simple as possible so that students can understand very easily. If you have any questions, please feel free to stop, right? So what I'll be covering is, what is impacting today the multinational pharmaceutical companies, the pharmaceutical research and development. What are the trends? Means what are the changes? What are the industry trends that are affecting? Right? What is the impact? Because of these trends, what pharmaceutical companies are forced to do something, not to do something, what are the decisions they are taking, right? It could be both have a positive impact or a negative impact. And what are the activities that happen in the clinical research, departments and functions, clinical safety and regulatory functions, that is called the value chain. When you say value chain, it means the end-to-end, right from beginning till the end. We call that as a value chain. So what are those spectrum of tasks that happens during drug development? And then who are all the companies that provide support to pharmaceutical companies to execute the clinical trials? Some of them are called clinical research organizations or contract research organizations. Some of you may have heard about that. It's called CROs. And then how is the outsourcing in the clinical development, safety, regulatory today, right? What are the opportunities available and what are some of the challenges? So this is where some information for students like you would be helpful. And then how to mitigate some of those, and how is the talent pool available in India is very ripe today to support this outsourcing. So that will be the points that I'll cover. I'll be more than happy to go more depth in each of those, but probably an offline session. Right? So while we know what happens in a clinical trial, right, there are three key pillars when it comes to executing that or implementing that, right? And that three key pillars are very basic, be it in clinical research or in our personal lives, right? If you want to buy something on Flipkart or Amazon, right, you need to, open that app, right? What is app basically? It's a technology. Right? So it's a device, you need a device, it's a technology. You order something. Now there is a process behind it. You place an order, something happens, and then someone will come and deliver. Right? So what are those three key pillars? One is people. There are people involved. Then process. Second thing is the process. So there is a process defined. GCP lays down a process. You saw pharmacovigilance process. You saw that process map, how safety capture till reporting needs to be done. Then there was a question, what are the signal detection databases available, which is a tool, right? So what are the three key pillars? People, process, technology. That's the fundamental three requirements for implementing anything, right? Any industry, including pharmaceutical research and development. So today, the adoption of technology in pharmaceutical companies, pharmaceutical companies are very late adopters of technology. There were many other industry verticals who used technology, but pharma companies still are picking up using technology. They're not much matured yet, but they are they're picking up now. So you are seeing not only the pharma companies, even the consumer, right? Now you see you can order medicines online, right? It was not the case. Now there are many apps, even Apple has launched a health app, right? So many health apps, so even consumer is going digital today, especially the millennials. Yesterday's topic was that, right? So this increased use of technology, mobile devices, etc., right? For participating in clinical research, or to get data, or to mine, or to report anything, right? So consumer is going digital. So very fundamental. Is there anything rocket science about it? We all agree to that? Got that. Innovation is imperative to building sustainable business, right? What is innovation? Right? Bringing something new, right? So unless there is a continuous improvement and innovation, right, survival becomes very difficult, right? So today generics market is picking up, right? So companies have to constantly innovate to bring new therapies, new launches, new processes, new medicines, etc. Right? So what it means, if one person cannot bring anything, right, I will be forced to collaborate. I will be forced to partner with someone who can think on my behalf. Right? So that is why you see a lot of collaboration between pharma companies, new startups, technology companies, academic institutions, because you have research students in this college, right? So I'm sure they'll have a lot of innovative ideas and suggestions, right? So how can companies tap academic institutions, technology companies, etc., to create any innovation? These are all the trends that are affecting pharma companies, because at some point of time, there weren't any new launches, right? So then all these things started, pharmaceutical companies started taking these initiatives. Then technology, I spoke about process people, right? Technology again here, predicting behaviors with big data, right? I'll not go into the technical details, but there is a lot of data being captured and lying in databases. Patient data, right? Trial data, safety data, anything. So how to make sense out of that data, right? Meaningful sense, how to get insights from that will help take better decisions, faster decisions, right? Why better decision, faster decision? Because if we don't take a decision, the companies keep on investing money, right? You will spend a lot. But if we know upfront that, the data that we are getting from this trial is not as per what is laid out in the study protocol, you can kill the trial, you can stop and reinvest that people, cost, resource to something else. So big data analytics is playing a huge role today in pharmaceutical R&D, right? So I'm sure there'll be many people who have a flair of science and technology, right? So these things also, from a career development point of view, technology will also be an important factor you as students need to pick, in addition to your regular scientific curriculum. And then the operational efficiency, right? Which means today, the pharmacovigilance process map, what we saw had, say, assume 10 steps, okay? And the 10 steps might take roughly 2 hours. I'm just giving a number. Can we re-engineer the process? Can we put in an automation? Can some steps be eliminated so that the case reporting happens more faster, right? Say in 5 steps, half the time. And what cost you will save, because every pharma company today reports, at least now number of safety cases are at least top 10 pharma companies have anywhere between 3 lakh to 4 lakh cases per year. So imagine if there are 20 pharmaceutical companies, how many cases are, right? So that is called operational efficiency. Do it faster, smarter, more agility, more speed, and save cost. So these are some of the trends that are impacting the entire activities in the drug development, safety and regulatory, that pharma companies are forced to take steps. Because what will be the outcome, right? These are the things that are happening, but what will they achieve by doing this? So that is why you see the 3 pillars. What is the impact? If these are impacting the pharma companies, they are forced to relook at how their business is structured, okay? Which means if there are 5,000 people in a pharma company, right? Can those 5,000 people do something else, right? And if they are doing they basically divide into 2 activities. One is which is core and which is non-core. Core is what, right? Even at homes we do.